As always, thank you. Good to see you, friend. Thank you.
We're also following breaking news out of Colorado in urgent man. And good morning, everyone. We are breaking in to give you breaking news out of Montebello. The National Weather Service investigating a possible tornado touching down there. Now, we want to show you video that was taken in Montebello as we look at the radar right now. And what you're seeing there, swirling debris. You can see, obviously, there is stuff being scattered around. This is some video that was taken earlier. Again, Montebello. Now, the National Weather Service has not confirmed this as a tornado. Here you see another picture there, and you see that stereotypical funnel right now. Let's get over to meteorologist David Bigger and Shauna Mendiola. They are both following this now, and would you say this is typical of a tornado touching down?
Yeah, that video definitely has the look of tornado touchdown, and we've been kind of poring over radar data here over the past couple of minutes. So this loop that you're seeing is from 11:10 this morning through about 11:40, so just about an hour ago up until about 20-30 minutes ago. And there's a couple of features on here that we look for when we're looking for spotting potential tornadoes, and a part of it is what we would call almost a small hook echo to show that the storm's got some rotation to it. And if you look, I'm going to pause this frame right here at just about 11:19. If you look very closely here, what you'll notice in this little spot right here is this little tiny hook that we're talking about. So if there isn't a potential tornado that we were seeing at that time, it was likely somewhere probably in this area and tracking in this direction with the storm. So I'll go ahead and put it back into motion. You can see how quickly it just kind of fired up and then dissipated after it went through the Montebello area. So this is definitely, Shauna, I'm thinking probably a very brief tornado, but it definitely looks like one.
And we've seen the video and we've seen the funnel, but you really can't confirm a tornado until you go out and survey the damage. But from the video that we're seeing, we definitely have seen roofs or a roof of a building torn off, and video of that funnel. You can see here on the camera, somebody seeing the spinning of the debris. So National Weather Service, in order to get a confirmation, has to go out there and survey the damage. But as we take a look at the radar, we definitely have seen the signature of a possible tornado, the hook that David was talking about, and also what we call rotation on radar, which is wind that they kind of come together and rotate.
All right, we have a lot of questions for you, so if you stand by, we'll, as we're looking at the radar now, we want to toss it over to News Chopper 4. Roland Spruill is there where we can see the damage from the air, and Roland, I understand they have evacuated some workers.
Yeah, Kathy, we're taking a look at this right now. This is the 1100 block of South Vale in Montebello at the Paper Box Company. I'll confirm the name of that right now, but take a look at this. If there was tornadic activity out here, it certainly would be affirmed by all the damage that we're seeing here. You can see completely through this roof and see all the merchandise down below. You can see building construction materials strewn all over the parking lot here on top of those cars and whatnot. Now, it's unclear exactly whether or not anybody's been injured or anything like that here. There is a fire truck, a ladder truck company that's a couple of blocks from here, perhaps surveying damage to other buildings. But look at just how large amount of damage that there is on this building. Just incredible, Kathy.
Seeing emergency crews there. Hopefully that means that there are not any injuries and everyone was able to get out fine. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of damage. If I could bring in David and Shauna at some point as we look at Roland's pictures, what do you think that's indicative of? What size of tornado? Could it be straight line winds? What could cause this kind of damage in your experience?
It's hard to gauge exactly the strength of a tornado. That's the whole purpose of the NWS going out there with a site survey, which it looks like they just said they're going to start doing probably a little bit later on today. And what they'll end up doing is they'll look at the damage, and then they have a rating scale called the Enhanced Fujita scale, and they can look at the damage and then make wind approximations, and then they'll also make approximations on the width of this tornado, possible tornado, as well as the length of path based off the damage that they're seeing. Some of this damage, I would not be surprised. It almost has that look of straight line wind damage, but when you pair it with the video that you're seeing on the right side of the screen there, it definitely has very much a tornado look to it. And as Roland continues to zoom in on things here, it just continues to show that the kind of damage that we would expect if we were potentially seeing a tornado. So if we could take radar really quickly here, I just wanted to kind of show something really fast at the wall. So here's where the storm was. You can see that it went right through the Montebello area like we were just talking about, and it quickly started to dissipate. So it still has a little bit of rotation to it. So if we actually switch the radar now and show you what the storm currently looks like, this is actually now moving through the San Gabriel Valley. It's looking a lot weaker now, but this has been still showing a little bit of rotation to it. So even though we're likely not seeing any additional funnel clouds popping out of this just yet, if you're anywhere in this section of the San Gabriel Valley, so about from Glendora to Duarte down to West Covina, I would definitely say just be very weather aware. Stay inside right now and stay away from windows just in case this does drop anything else, especially because it could be just producing some gusty winds as well, and I would be very concerned about any damage happening in other areas if this does kind of hold together. But right now, Shauna, it looks like this is sort of dissipated and is moving on, but we're going to keep our eye on it.
Yeah, and anything that, again, considered 75-mile or above kind of wind that moved through, that would be considered an F0 tornado. It's a light damage, which we possibly have been seeing, even moderate, I would say, up to about 112.
Yeah, and that's actually another good point to bring up is typically for California, we always are looking at the very low end of the enhanced Fujita scale for tornado damage. So typically we see a lot of EF0, EF1 tornadoes. It's not totally uncommon to get that around our area just because of the topography. That helps to kind of induce a little bit of storm rotation. That's why we get so many water spouts off the coastline, for example. So typically these tornadoes pop into about the EF0, EF1 range. So as Roland continues to show stuff from the chopper, Kathy.
All right, yeah, we're looking at all those workers who had evacuated, and one good thing we can tell you is that we're not hearing of any injury, so no one injured out there in Montebello because of this, what appears to be a possible tornado out there. But right now we'd like to bring in Chief Sam DiGiovanna from the Verdugo Fire Academy. Chief Sam, thank you for joining us as always. I know fire officials there on the scene. What do you make of this, and how do we respond to something like this?
Yeah, you don't see things like this that often here in Southern California, but when you do, there's, our first responsibility is obviously the protection of life. And when we see this, you got to remember there's going to be wires down, and there's people out on the streets, and there's a lot more hazards than just what you see right here. So just like David said, there is potential for unstable weather coming up, so be on the alert. Be alert and be prepared.
And what are some of the things people should do? As you said, it's not that we have basements that we crawl into. We're not used to this. When we see this kind of activity, it's usually a water spout, and we get great photos from it, but we're not used to it happening here on the land. So what's some advice? What should people do?
Well, like David said, stay indoors. Make sure stay away from windows. That's get in the center of the house if at all possible. Even inside a bathroom, a shower area is one of the areas that they say if you don't have a basement is a safe place. But even afterwards, let's say this blows through, expect that wires will be down and treat them as if they are energized. Even if they're going across the chain link fence, that chain link fence can be an power source. So be extra careful with that, and the debris, blowing broken glass. So there's a lot of hazards. Just what you see right here almost looks like a little bit of a war zone.
Yeah, it certainly does, and I would assume crews will be out now as soon as possible, out checking for downed wires and any other danger, but there's a lot to clean up from this.
Sure is. And don't forget, last night we got hit pretty hard in Orange County with rain. And I want to say this: don't underestimate the power of rain, especially when it comes to flooding. 6 inches of water, moving water, can knock you off your feet. 12 inches can move your car, and 18 inches can move an SUV or a pickup truck. So don't go trying to cross. If you get a downpour and you see a lot of water moving, don't try to cross it. Turn around, don't drown.
Unfortunately, we have seen that. Thank you, Chief Sam, so much for weighing in. We really appreciate, as always, your expertise. We want to go back to David and Shauna. One of the questions I have is, now, this afternoon, can we expect more of this activity? What are we looking at?
So we are still going to see some thunderstorms this afternoon. There's the possibility of that. And so far, we've already seen that a couple of them have just a few signs of rotation on them. just because we see rotation in a thunderstorm doesn't mean that we're going to drop a funnel cloud, a tornado, anything like that. But it just suggests that there's that little bit of a possibility. It's something that we're definitely going to stay very aware of for today. One thing that we continue to watch is the same thunderstorm that produced this tornado in the potential tornado in the Montebello area has now moved over the San Gabriel Valley. So actually, I don't know how well Roland Spruill can hear me right now, but if he can, if he could take that camera shot and kind of come up toward the horizon and look toward about the West Covina area, that'll be looking at the back edge of this storm that just went through this area. And I would not be surprised if it's still looking pretty intense, because we're still seeing some pretty intense returns on radar right now. So it'll be interesting. I'm kind of scanning the skyline here with Roland, and you can see, first of all, just kind of the mix of sun and clouds out there right now. But yeah, okay, so it still looks like we've just got some general storms in the area, but not necessarily anything that we're necessarily going to watch very closely. But thank you, Roland, for taking a look up at the horizon for us. So if we switch back to radar for a second, Sean and I will kind of talk a little bit about something that we're keeping track of, and that's what we've been mentioning, the rotation within thunderstorms. So we're going to switch the display here just a little bit, and now what you're going from is looking at the intensity of rainfall to the intensity of wind speed. So the colors here on radar talk about the speed of the wind, if you will, relative to the radar site. Now, for this radar site, it's well down here off the screen, so it's sitting about that direction. So when you look at these colors here, you see this green color that we have over West Covina? That's an indication that winds are pointing toward the radar. Over Covina itself, you see all this red coloring, that means the winds are coming away from the radar. So you'd end up with a circulation sort of like this, which is still showing us, Shauna, that this storm has some rotation to it. It's just looking kind of broad circulation, if you will, rather than very fine. If it was all isolated in one section, I'd be very concerned once again. But still, the fact that this is even showing this is still, I would say if you're in the Covina area, just stay away from windows at this point.
That's right. If you want to step in here, too, we want to show people that, we're different heights.
Yeah.
But, yeah, this is kind of like the wind turning away from the radar site, and in the green, that's turning towards it. So that's where you get the rotation. So this is one of the maps that we follow, and we, of course, follow the radar as well to follow thunderstorm activity and that hook signature, which we're seeing right here. Kind of looks like a little hook. We call it a hook echo. So far, haven't been seeing too much, but we are monitoring that cell still, because if anything were to happen, I think that's the one that would be doing the damage.
Yeah, this is one of those cases, Kathy, where you look at a storm history and you go, okay, the storm has a history of producing something, so we're going to continue to watch it until the storm completely dissipates. But as I'm kind of looking over your shoulder at the chopper shot, Kathy, and this definitely has that kind of classic look to it of a very small path. And this is the kind of amazing thing about tornadoes, is that you can end up with one side of the street getting some damage, and you can see
all the debris that was kicked up and then fell on the ground.
I think it's interesting you said it doesn't actually have to touch down to qualify to be a tornado. We've seen tornado disasters where an entire town is lost.
Right. So you're used to seeing kind of that classic tornado video where the cloud goes all the way to the ground. That's what we call a condensation funnel. For a tornado to have touched down, all that you need is swirling debris at the ground, because that means even if your condensation funnel, even that cloud part, if it hasn't gotten all the way down to the ground, the circulation itself is down at the ground, and that's where we're seeing the winds kick up and knock about debris. So if this does end up being a confirmed tornado, it was likely because of the video showing that, even though we have that other Twitter video that was showing that the funnel cloud itself wasn't all the way down to the surface, but the circulation was.
And there's debris.
Yeah.
Okay, so how common is this? I think a lot of people were very surprised last night when they got that tornado warning alert. I know I was at my house, and I was texting David asking about it. How common is this? Have we had this before? And how did we get here? This is not something I feel like we're used to.
So it's interesting. It's rare, but it's also not rare.
I know.
I wish there was a good word kind of in between there. It's, I guess, more or less uncommon.
It's more common in flat-lying areas, in the plains where there's more space, and yeah, right. We have all these buildings and topography in Southern California, so it's not something that we typically see. But with thunderstorms like this, you can get a pop-up storm. You could get that.
For California, our tornadoes all tend to be very weak, and a lot of it has to do with the general topography of the state. The Central Valley, for example, is a great location for potentially getting storms to spin up a bit, We also have a little bit of that because of the Santa Monica Mountains. It deflects the winds in a way off the coastline that allows storms to rotate. So that's why we often get water spouts. And if you look at a lot of our tornadoes that we've had since decades ago, a lot of them happen to be right along the coastline because a lot of them are water spouts that held together, came on shore. I would say it's a little more rare to get tornadoes a little bit farther inland, like around Montebello. But we do have a couple spots in the IE, such as around Lake Elsinore, up through maybe Riverside, over to Corona. And we have this area that we call the Lake Elsinore Convergence Zone. It all has to do with the winds. It's all topography driven, and it allows storms to spin up, so we do occasionally get funnel clouds in that area. So it's not totally uncommon. I wish I had a better answer for this, Kathy, but it is somewhat rare.
Okay.
Especially when we get damage like this.
Yeah, absolutely. We are seeing a lot of damage from this. And again, how long are we expecting these conditions to stay with us? Is it, throughout the afternoon? Again, what are we looking at? Because I think that's what people really want to know.
Yeah, well, heating the day, I mean, Dave and I were watching this. We still have a chance throughout basically the afternoon and evening with those flood watches as well. We are watching that cell, though, that's moving through, I think, just west of Covina and south of Irwindale, David, if you could see that.
Right.
Just north of the 10. That one, it's starting to pick up a little bit and heading out to the north.
It still has a little bit of energy to this storm. So on radar right now, we're still keeping track. So the same storm that dropped the tornado, the potential tornado in the Montebello area, currently over the San Gabriel Valley, approaching the Covina area, and it is heading in the general direction of maybe the western edges of Charter Oak and probably the southern portions of Glendora. Now, even though there is no warning on this storm, because right now we haven't heard any reports of this still having a tornado on it, I would urge that if you're in the Covina area, if you're in the Glendora area, the Charter Oak area, seek shelter inside. Just stay inside and stay away from windows right now. Because if this does end up dropping something else, it would have the potential to kick up debris, and you definitely don't want to be around windows.
Yeah, don't even be outside, I think.
Yeah, don't be outside, be inside. And, I know a lot of people don't necessarily have experience with tornadoes around here, so what do? So if you're in a home, get to an interior room if you've got one, a closet, something that's well away from your outer walls. If you have a basement, I know a lot of us don't have basements, great. You can then try to hop into a basement if you've got the opportunity. If you're in an apartment complex, try to get into an interior hallway or on the lowest level.
Or a bathroom.
Yeah,
right?
or something like that.
Hey, David, I think we have someone from the National Weather Service on the phone.
We do. Actually, Ariel Cohen from the National Weather Service is here to give us some new details. And Ariel, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here right now.
Okay, well, we look forward to having you chime in on this because this has been a bit of an unusual event for us.
Absolutely, yes. We have, at this point, over the past couple of days, potentially upwards of 2 tornadoes that have affected portions of Southern California, the LA area, both yesterday and the Carpinteria area. And we're actually headed there in order to see some of the damage that occurred and kind of come up with some idea about a rating for that tornado. And then recently, just in the past couple of hours, as you were just mentioning, the Montebello area was impacted by a possible tornado. We're going to be looking at the damage in that area. I just want to mention real fast some of the advice you all providing about tornado safety is absolutely critical. Kind of summarizing it, we have the phrase get in, get down, and cover up when it comes to tornado safety. Be as low as you can be. Make sure there's as many walls between you and the outside as possible. And so this is continuing to be a very active storm system, even as we head into the springtime, and just encourage everyone to be monitoring the latest weather information.
And Ariel, how do you go about determining if this was indeed a tornado in either case and then rating it? Is it based on damage, or what do you look at?
We're looking at the pattern of the damage in terms of how it lays out. If it has a tendency to be laid out in what we call a divergent pattern, or in other words, things kind of spreading out away from, say, a central line, then that tends to be what we call a microburst. Now, when we see the damage all falling inward on a centralized direction, that's more conducive to the type of damage that we see related to a tornado. So we combine that along with the overall dimensions, the length versus the width of the damage path to get some idea about how localized the damage is, compare all this information with radar signatures, so you're talking about that a little bit earlier, and also what the environment is like in and around the actual storm to come up with some overall understanding of how probable it was to be a tornado, along with videos of what was happening as the damage occurred.
I'm hearing some feedback too, if you're hearing that, someone talking on this line. I'm sorry, Ariel. David was talking about one thing that really caught my interest, and that is that it doesn't actually have to touch down to qualify as a tornado.
Exactly. So tornadoes, no matter what mode of tornadoes or what common way of getting a tornado, all tornadoes are a ground-up process. All tornadoes, whether they're from a deep rotating thunderstorm that goes up tens of thousands of feet above the ground, or even if they're just from a little shower moving off the waters on shore, all of these processes, all of the ground circulation, that's where the damage is, and that's where tornadoes get their name. It's something at the ground. And then sometimes we can have atmospheric structures that are more likely to intensify that circulation that's going on, but it's still a ground process in the end.
All right. Well, Ariel Cohen from the National Weather Service, we know you're heading out there. We hope to hear from you again once you're able to make an assessment of both of these possible tornadoes. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. David and Shauna have been busy with this. He was mentioning some of the things you can do, and Shauna was talking about how you can take cover. And we need to go to them right now. Do you have an alert that you want to get out?
Yeah, we just got an alert, a special weather statement.
Let's see. So, yeah, we just got a special weather statement for the San Gabriel Valley. So anybody that's in the Covina area, extending into Charter Oak, Glendora, San Dimas, this is that same thunderstorm that we've been tracking. First of all, if you look at radar, you see that little blue dot there. That's just telling me that we've got potential hail with this. So we're likely seeing some pea-sized hail in a few spots. But the National Weather Service put out the special weather statement for this area because there has been an observed landspout tornado in the past. Not sure if we're currently seeing one right now, although, again, we've been keeping an eye on this storm, and it still very much has kind of that rotation signature to it.
Yeah, the best advice is also to stay inside with the situation.
Yeah, so when we're looking at the red, that's a lot of heavy rain. Is that wind as well?
Yeah, so what you're seeing on radar is it's essentially rainfall generally. When you start to get a lot of these darker red intensities, that's where you're starting to potentially see maybe some pea-sized hail mixed in. That little tiny blue that you're seeing on the very edge of the cell there, it's a little bit time delayed, but that is essentially our radar is able to detect where hail might exist within the storm itself. It has a way of being able to diagnose what it's looking at. I would say that this is definitely producing some heavy rainfall. We're probably seeing some gusty winds out of this, but the National Weather Service did put out that special weather statement because I think they were concerned, based off the history of this and what we have seen over the Montebello area, that we have to keep an eye on this very closely. So again, if you're in the Glendora area right now, if you're in, let's see, Charter Oak, essentially any of these areas that we're zooming in on. So where the 210 freeway kind of dips to the south a little bit, south of the 66, before you get to the 57. If you're in any of these communities here, so that's northern Charter Oak into southern Glendora, I would say get inside, so seek shelter if you're outside, stay away from windows right now, and just remain inside until the storm goes completely past, because we're just concerned about maybe any sort of wind, or even if we do get another little quick spin up here, the potential for debris to get thrown around outside.
What does tornadic activity look like on your radar when you see it?
So typically, actually, if I back this up, we'll show you what it looked like in the Montebello area, and we'll actually just kind of pause it here. So this is again, this was earlier, right around the 11:20 time frame on radar. And, I mean, Shauna will agree with me on this.
It looks like a hook.
Yeah, so it's got what we call a hook. And this isn't your classic Midwest kind of supercell where you have a very clearly well-defined shape to a storm. For us in California, we typically have a lot smaller thunderstorms, and our hooks tend to be a little bit on the smaller side. But if you look very carefully, I'm going to try to do what I can here to draw. This is the hook shape that we're talking about right here. It's kind of like this. So typically, on these storms, if we were to drop a tornado out of it, it would probably be right about in this area here. And you can see, if you look at where Montebello is, about where that may have happened. So it's probably on the outer edges of Montebello, but definitely within Montebello itself. That's what we look for on the rain part of radar. So again, this is the part of radar where we're seeing the intensity of the rain. You can see how that hook kind of went away. Now if we go back to the San Gabriel Valley, it looks like it's dissipated a little bit, but if we go back just a couple of frames here, you can see, again, it's got that kind of little bit of a hook kind of shape to it once again. It's a lot weaker than what we had when it was going through the Montebello area, but it's still there. And then the other thing that we look at, Kathy, is actually I'll send it back over to you.
Okay, we just wanted to let our viewers know it's 12:30 right now, and we are following breaking news because what could be a possible tornado has touched down in Montebello. It has caused a lot of damage. Workers were evacuated from this building that you're seeing there. We're understanding there aren't any injuries, but if you could see the video from the air, a chopper has been over it. You see parts of the roof just blown off, and look at that. You can see that classic funnel that's coming down from the storm again. So that hit, it was about an hour ago. This was in Montebello, and it had all the classic signs. In fact, the National Weather Service, we just spoke with Ariel Cohen from the National Weather Service. They are heading out there right now, and they're going to be assessing all of the damage and just looking at the way this all laid out. I mean, it's in a small area, but again, it has that classic spiral of the damage. And we've been talking to some people out there, so we have that video that's coming in, but we've also been talking to people out there about what they saw. So if we have that ready, maybe we could cue that up and listen to that right now. And again, you see that classic swirling out there. Let's bring in Chief Sam DiGiovanna once again from the Verdugo Fire Academy, because we want to talk about, as we're seeing these strong systems roll through this afternoon, we want to be able to tell people exactly what they need to do to stay safe, because we're seeing that risk right now in the San Gabriel Valley. Chief Sam.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, you know, do not drive through flooded areas, even if it looks shallow enough to cross. The large majority of deaths occur to flash flooding when people try to drive through flooded areas. So make sure you turn around, don't drown, and just stay home. If you can, just stay indoors. That's the big thing, is stay inside. Stay away from windows if the winds pick up, and stay in the center of your house.
Okay, very good advice. I know when I lived in the panhandle of Texas, they said, you know, if you need to get in the bathtub, pull a mattress over your head, you know, just everything you need to do. What if you're in a car, Chief Sam? What's the best advice? You're driving along and you see this.
Well, being in a vehicle is not a safe place to be. The best place you can do is take course of action is to drive to a strong, secure building, not in a shed or any type of even a mobile home. Mobile homes are very dangerous. They're lightweight in construction. Go to a building that is strong, sturdy, and seek shelter inside. If you are stuck in your car, get down in your car, cover your head as much as possible, and just stay safe inside there if at all possible, if you can't get to a building. If you have to abandon your car, seek shelter in the low-lying areas, if you could get to a ravine, and that's what you should do, the last choice at all.
Yeah, it's like earthquake advice, you know, to duck, cover, hold on. It's the same sort of principle. Protect your head, protect your body. Chief Sam, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here as always. Let's check in with our own Conan Nolan. He is in our newsroom. He's been watching all of this unfold. And let's see what he has to say. Conan?
Hi, Kathy. Well, yes, a rarity, certainly in Southern California. Just as there occasionally is an earthquake in Missouri or Kansas, occasionally there's a tornado in Southern California. It doesn't happen very often. The last time this took place was in 1983. There were actually 2 tornadoes that struck the South Park neighborhood of south central Los Angeles. Some of our viewers may remember that. Fritz Coleman had just started out as a weathercaster back then. It was these tornadoes at that time, also in March, right around, I'm trying to remember what day it was, but it was in March in '83, an estimated, and it was far severer than this. It was an estimated 9 people died. and it went apparently from down by South Central Avenue and near Alameda all the way up towards to the convention center, which suffered significant damage. And that was, well, 83, how many years ago was that? Quite a bit. But that's the last time I certainly can remember, and I'm not sure if David's there, if there's any other instance of something like this happening in Southern California. But if there's this weather convergence in terms of all the ingredients that you need for a classic tornado, it doesn't come together very often in Southern California, but it has in the past, again, once every maybe 40, 50 years, and that's the last time. This one, a remarkable scene. But yeah, the pictures that we saw moments ago of the funnel cloud coming down, forming in the upper atmosphere, making its way to the ground, that is right out of, that's right out of the playbook for the Great Midwest. Again, very rare that we see it here, but fortunately, nobody seems to have been hurt in this case.
Yeah, that is the good news. I'll let you talk to David right now because I think he does have some stats or at least some information about other incidents that have happened.
We had something very similar to this. Gosh, I have to think back. I want to say it was either 2014 or 2015. It was another area within the basin itself, and it was very much like this. It was a very quick spin up under a little cell, and I remember that we had been watching that cell as it was off the coastline, potentially producing a water spout. And then the cell kind of sort of moved over inland, briefly fired a little spin up, did a bunch of damage, and then quickly went away. So yeah, that's at least the most recent one that I know of. But yeah, the one that Conan's referring to, that was probably our more classic tornado, and probably one of the longest tracked tornadoes we've had through the LA area.
Yeah, in 1983 with 9 deaths and hitting the convention center. That's a lot more serious, thankfully, than what we're seeing today, a lot stronger. Thank you, Conan, for that information. We want to show you some video also that we're getting, and then this is some new video. This is an Arco gas station, from what I understand, and people were inside. They were watching this. So just imagine you're inside there and you're seeing this outside. They have their phones out and are watching that swirling damage. Dangerous with the windows there because something could be tossed through there, but they were probably so shocked at seeing this because Conan said it best. This is like something you'd see out of the Midwest.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm glad that everybody's inside there, but definitely if you see something like this happen, get away from the windows, because you saw what was just flying past the windows there. It doesn't take much to break through a window, and if it's something that's metallic, or it doesn't even have to be metallic, anything sharp that's moving in the wind, you're going to get a pretty good like scratch from that, maybe even some sort of laceration.
Yeah, certainly, and even in
75-mile-per-hour wind gust.
Yeah, like even in when you have the classic straight line winds and you don't have a tornado, it can send things flying for miles.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, we'll kind of hit on that point one more time. So for straight line winds, typically if you were to look at straight line wind damage for a second, what you'd see is a lot of the things that have been knocked over all pointing in the same direction. The National Weather Service also talked about the potential for microbursts. That's where you're going to have the wind coming down out of the cloud, it hits the ground, and then it spreads out. So everything will kind of be radially in a circle but pointed away from it. In the case of a tornado, everything's pointing in every direction.
It's swirling.
Yeah,
rotating.
And this is classic. So with the National Weather Service, did they take into account video that was shot by people as part of their investigation, or is it mostly just what they're seeing?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination. They'll look at some of the video in this case, and then what they'll do is they'll go to some of these locations and they'll look at where the kind of things that have been picked up, the kind of things that have been knocked over, the sort of damage that we see, and then that's where they come up with their wind approximations.
Yeah.
So, Shauna, what are we looking at right now on radar?
I mean, clearly
about that radar right now. Sorry, Shauna, like, you know, what's happening now?
No problem. No, we're watching that cell that moved through that produced this possible tornado. And, you know, at one point we thought that it would strengthen and bring those conditions over to the San Gabriel Valley, which we're showing you the loop right now. But it looks like things are actually weakening a bit, still in the area, and still very heavy in terms of that rain. But the hail has kind of died down a bit. possibly very windy still in Glendora, but it looks like that rotation has let up a bit. So we're talking about, you know, the wind directions. If you think about a tornado coming towards each other in the opposite way in a little circle, this is now moving towards the northeast, but we can't let our guard down still. We're going to watch this cell.
Yeah.
And do recommend people stay inside if you live in the area of Glendora and just east of San Dimas. And up through, that's the 66 right there,
Yeah.
and the 39.
So I think if you've been listening to us and we have been telling you to potentially get inside, stay sheltered around Covina, Charter Oak, you're probably on the backside of this. You're probably okay right now. Still in the Glendora area, a little bit concerned, but yeah, as Shawna was mentioning, this is starting to show less and less rotation. In fact, I'm going to switch the view again, so we're going to go from rain and we're going to take a look at winds within the storm. So I'm going to back this up just a couple of frames to when it was going over the Covina area. And you can see, if you look carefully, the red colors, that means wind away from the radar, so I'll draw a little arrow. And the green colors are winds toward the radar, so like this. So that means that we would have a little bit of a circulation in this area. If you don't see the red and the green colors right up against each other, that means we're not having really good circulation. So if I actually just advance it to what we're seeing now, the green and the red's very separated here, Shawna. So I think most of the rotation of the storm is probably gone, but still producing some rain and probably some pea-sized hail.
Right.
And not to say that it couldn't pick up later. We'll be watching it throughout the afternoon, I'm assuming, to see if anything starts up again.
Yeah, so this cell's heading up into the mountains pretty soon here. So
It's leaving the flat land.
So it's kind of leaving the San Gabriel Valley. But if we back out the view here, I mean, Shawna, we still have just some scattered activity out there, but as of right now, nothing's overly concerning just yet.
Okay, well, we also have our NBC4 photographer, Christopher Lee, out there in Montebello, and he was able to grab some workers who are out there who got evacuated this morning when all that damage happened from what could have been that tornado. We don't know yet. We'll find out from the National Weather Service, but we can bring him in right now, hopefully, and talk to some of the people out there who had to be evacuated. Maybe what they saw, what they heard would be my first question, if Chris can hear us now.
Yes, I do. I have a Mr. John here with me. He was inside the building when this happened.
Hi, yeah, I was working in my office, and all of a sudden the electricity went out, and I thought it was just one of those regular blackouts. Then I heard sounds. It felt like somebody was hitting the walls with iron bars, and the whole building was in panic mode. So when I finally walked out of my office and took a peek outside of the whole building, I saw trash flying around, trees falling down, and even our road-up gates are torn. I mean, it's an iron road-up gate, and if that is torn up, imagine if somebody was standing right there at the moment. He would have been gone, or she would have been gone, you know. I mean, I'm just thankful that nobody's injured. It happened so quick, and we have no notification, no Amber Alert whatsoever. It just happened, and now we're all out of the premises.
Did you know it was a tornado?
I assume it was, but at first I thought it was an earthquake, because having a tornado in California is not very realistic, I would say. But the reality that is, it was. I mean, it wasn't like a huge tornado, otherwise we would have been gone already. But it was still very much unexpected.
Have you ever experienced this before?
No, not in California at least. You know, like, it certainly did a lot of damage to our building. I think our operation will stop for the next month or so. So let's hope for the best. And once again, I'm just grateful that no one's got hurt.
And how many people were inside with you when this happened?
Well, roughly 15-ish.
And
yeah.
You just ran out?
We just walked out, yeah.
Were people panicked? Scary?
Well, some of us, yeah. Some of us were nervous. We didn't know how to react to it, because that was the first time for a lot of us to face this kind of disaster, I would say. But we kept it calm. We kept it calm. We just walked outside and waited for the firefighters to arrive and do their job. They're still in the building.
And everybody's comfortable. Nobody suffered any.
No. We're all good. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking to me, Mr. John.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Chris Lee, for giving us that interview. So happy to hear that no one was injured, but how terrifying that must have been. They thought it was an earthquake at first and didn't know what to think. He said it sounded like metal bars pounding on that business. But now comes the cleanup because they don't have a business to go back to. He's estimating it's going to be about a month. We'll bring Chief Sam back in. Sam, what did you think of the response? They heard all of that. It must have been terrifying. And then when it was pretty much over, they went outside to wait for a response, to wait for rescuers to get there. They remained calm. I would assume that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, that is important. Stay calm. And like he said, no one thinks of tornadoes in California, but we probably thought it was an earthquake. So, be aware of that, too. This erratic wind is going to be with us. So even if you're not in the direct impact area that was impacted by this, you can't expect power outages around in the area. So when you're driving the street lights may be out. Come to an intersection, make a full stop, and check both ways. There's going to be downed trees and power lines. So just use caution right now. And if you don't have to go out, don't go out. And the other thing I want to say is don't forget your pets. Don't forget about Toto in the Midwest, and don't forget about the elderly people. Check on your neighbors who may be elderly and may need help as well.
We're also wondering, how do you know it's safe to go outside? They say they went outside afterward. When is it safe?
Probably an earthquake, just as soon as the shaking stops, as soon as things calm down and settles down. But again, I want to emphasize that you need to use caution because there's going to be a lot of broken glass, debris, and certainly down power lines. So watch your step. Be careful. Don't go running around. Just be situational awareness like we are at the fire department. And just use caution at all times.
Yeah, I think so many people were surprised when they got the alert last night. Some people tended to write it off as, oh, it's probably a water spout, it's probably nothing, it's a mistake. But we really should never do that. If you get an alert on the TV, or in my case, I had it on my home alarm, and I just thought it was a battery, and I was, ignored it at first. We shouldn't do that. No, don't. We've seen a lot of crazy things lately, and especially our weather, so don't ignore anything. Take everything. If you're getting an alert, take it and being serious, and stay tuned to Channel 4. Make sure you're keep aware of what's going on and the weather and the conditions, just like our weather people are doing and doing a great job of. Just keep informed. Yeah, we have a great weather team. Thank you, Chief Sam. Thank you for helping us out with all the precautions and what we need to do in every situation. Thank you. Thank you. All right, as we look at the damage, I want to bring Shauna and David back in. I know you're busy looking at the radar and looking at the numbers and what we should expect this afternoon. So as we come up on the 1 o'clock hour, just wondering where we sit right now with this storm.
Well, Kathy, that cell that moved through that brought that possible tornado to the area looks like it's starting to fall apart now. So actually that's good news. As me and David have been watching this for the past hour, really not seeing too much rotation within it. That would be an indicator of a possible tornado again as this would redevelop, and also no hail in it. It looks like the rain is also starting to die down as well, so not as heavy as previous. It's headed towards the mountains, so it's losing that flat land that it really needs to help it spin, and it's headed towards the mountains.
Yeah, and once it starts to run up into the mountains, it starts essentially running into the friction of the mountains, if you will. So it really starts to disrupt the cell, and that's what we're looking at. Is it still producing some pretty heavy rainfall on a few spots, but it essentially is starting to dissipate, which is a good sign. We will continue to obviously watch for additional thunderstorm activity later on this afternoon. So, I mean, Shauna,
we're not out of the woods yet.
If just in case we were to get some other warning or something else popping up, do you want to take people through
of
some
course,
of the safety?
we've got, safety during tornadoes, since this is not something that we commonly see.
Right.
We want, everyone to be aware if you are under one of these cells, you want to get inside and away from windows, because as David's mentioned before, these kind of winds are not straight. They're not coming down straight from the sky. They're rotating, and so anything that hits a window will definitely cause some damage and hurt you if you are close to a window and that were to happen. So you want to be safe. I was always told when I lived in Colorado to get into a bathroom if you don't have a room or a basement, because it's an interior room. So So move into a closet or a hallway, something like that, or take cover under a table if you have one, kind of like duck and cover with earthquake safety. Same thing here in this situation, workbench or inside a bathtub.
All right. Thank you very much, both of you. We want to go back out to photographer Christopher Lee because he has Alex Gilman with the Montebello Fire Department with us. And maybe you can tell us the situation right now. I know that there's been a lot of damage to that building.
Yes, we're on the air, so go ahead and tell me the situation.
Absolutely. So shortly after 11:20 here this morning, the Montebello Fire Department received a call of possible roof damage from a microcell event that moved over the city of Montebello. We are currently assessing the situation. Right now, I have no information on any injuries, but all of our resources are deployed for both the fire department and the police department, along with some neighboring agencies that are assisting us. We're certainly closing the perimeter off here. All evacuees are being made, and then we'll be starting to assess damages here from this microcell event.
How big is the area?
We are currently working on the perimeter to establish that. Once I know more, I'll be sure to get that back to you with both the east-west and north-south directions. I've heard it's a couple city blocks, but we're going to confirm that, and we'll make sure everybody is aware.
Is this the first time you guys respond to a tornado?
I can't give a confirmed answer for that. We're certainly prepared for all instances of any type of inclement weather. These are the instances that our neighboring and our agencies prepare for, both the fire department and the police department. So no matter if it's a sunny day in Southern California or we have a microcell like today, our resources are always prepared to deploy.
Thank you. Any questions, Kathy?
I'm just wondering how many businesses are involved here. Is this one big business, separate businesses? Any idea right now?
Well, Kathy wants to ask you, how many businesses got involved? Is this a one big business or a couple of different businesses?
Right now, we're still doing our preliminary assessment of that. A number of pieces of panels have come off at least one building that we can confirm, but right now we're still doing an assessment on the rest of the neighboring structures. So I'll be sure to get back to you with more information on that.
And no injuries to people?
Right now, we're still making assessments on injuries, so I'll get back to you with that information.
Any more questions, Kathy?
I think that's it. Thank you so much. Again, that was Alex Gilman from Montebello Fire and Christopher Lee, our photographer, who is out there talking to people, some people who witnessed it, heard it, and had to evacuate that business, which now is missing a roof in many cases. So they're saying it's going to be at least a month before they're back up and running. But what's such a scary situation there. We do also have a notice that the Montebello Police Department is putting out, and they're saying to avoid Washington Boulevard from Greenwood Avenue to Vale Avenue because of this, and that's going to be for the next few hours. It's closed, and there's going to be a detour out there, so just to be aware of that. Also, Chief Sam was saying, you know, be observant about downed lines because there's a lot of damage in this area and you just want to be really careful. But the good news we're hearing from our weather department, and again, we will be with you nonstop pretty much because we have our newscasts coming up, and of course we're always online, NBCLA.com. You can always find weather information there and on our website. So we're always with you, plus our app you can get right to your phone. So you're never disconnected from us. We'll always have the very latest information, but you're going to be watching this closely.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to continue to watch all the storms this afternoon. Just to echo a little bit of advice there that was being given by the official, give them some space to survey this, clean it up, take care of down lines and damage. Don't just go to the area going to go take pictures because they definitely don't need that right now. One thing that we're still watching is we still have additional rain showers that are out there, so some of these areas that just had this go through might start to get some light rain to moderate rain probably within the next half an hour or so. So it's still going to be a bit of a tricky afternoon. And right now, Shauna, I'm not seeing anything too concerning on radar. Everything's still looking like we've got a lot of showers, but
yeah, the main cell we've been watching is starting to fall apart and head into the mountains, so that's good news. If it were to reform, I think we would be on it too.
Yeah,
how likely is that to happen, that we could have a pop-up?
To have another pop-up storm, it's possible this afternoon. We still have a little bit of instability out there. This was a great example of what can happen. Essentially, if we can take radar here for just a second, what I can do is I could put this into motion over a 3-hour period. So let me back this up. So this cell that we were talking about was originally this little tiny patch. I'll put a little circle on it. That was the cell earlier this morning as it went over essentially probably just to the north of Torrance.
Looking pretty harmless at that point.
Looking pretty harmless, but then we're going to advance through a little bit. You can see how it's starting to pick up strength as it goes through Inglewood. And then it continues to intensify as it gets closer and closer to Montebello. And now we'll shift the view here so you can see that. It then intensified quite a bit, started to show a rotation signature to it. May have dropped a tornado around this time, probably sometime around 11:20.
24.
And then from that point on, it's still stuck around for another hour or so and worked its way through the San Gabriel Valley. But you can see what it looks like now. It's completely fallen apart. But essentially, it was a small cell, popped a lot of intensity all of a sudden, and then started to dissipate. So, I mean, Sean, I think we still have a little bit of that risk, fortunately.
Yeah, that center circulation in the Bay Area is still funneling all this moisture our way. So you'll notice spots where it's sunny at times, and then sometimes we've got some rain. And even, you know, I want to tell people that sunshine can energize some storms sometimes as well.
Yeah, I mean, looking at radar here, we've still got plenty of activity out there for the afternoon. So, yeah, just make sure that you stay tuned with us because we'll keep you on top of stuff.
Yeah, it's not over yet.
You have a busy afternoon ahead of you. We're going to check in with NBC4's Makalo Medina. He is out right now, and he has some information for us. Makalo.
Yeah, we wanted to show you what was happening here at a recycling plant here in Montebello. They were picking up some of the debris, but they just closed the gate on us, so we can't show you that. But it looks like a lot of debris from the roof area of this recycling plant. A satellite dish apparently fell off. They were working to clean that up, along with a bunch of other debris in this area. I talked to Montebello city officials a short time ago. They tell me what they are describing this, or they're describing this rather as some sort of microburst that happened in the city. They said the rain just kind of poured down very quickly. There was intense wind, and then of course all of this damage reports of that tornado that hit this mostly industrial area about a mile south of the city hall here in Montebello. So far no reports of any injuries according to city officials that I talked to, but certainly a lot of minor damage to some of these buildings in this largely industrial area. We're going to try to walk around here, try to see if we can talk to some folks that may have seen this as well. So if you want to come with us, we can do that. There's a food truck over here. I wonder if these guys just got here or whether or not they've actually seen some of the stuff. How's it going, sir? We're from Channel 4. Did you see any of the stuff that happened here earlier today? The rain or anything like that?
No, yo nomás venía pasando.
No? Pero no veo nada?
No veo nada, yo traigo hambre.
He was just hungry. He hasn't seen anything right now. But certainly a lot of folks were watching and experiencing this event. You, of course, saw some of that video that was posted on social media over the course of the last hour or so. The owner and some of the workers of this recycling plant certainly had a lot of damage. I know you don't want to talk to us. We're live on TV right now. But, sir, did you see any of the damage at all?
No sé qué es.
Did you? ¿Qué pasó aquí? No? Nope. Okay. No, we're not getting a lot of reaction from some of these workers here. But if we can peek through, you can probably see some of the damage here at this recycling plant caused by what a lot of people are just astonished to see by the weather event that happened here within the course of the last couple of hours. Certainly, nothing incredibly significant in terms of deaths or injuries. That's certainly good news. But of course, a lot of damage and a lot of freaked out people because they haven't seen this sort of activity really ever, and they were really surprised to see that it did happen. Of course, a lot of people describing this as a tornado as well. That's kind of what we have right now here from this portion of Montebello. We're going to try to get some more folks, hopefully who can talk to us on camera, kind of tell us what they say. We'll get back to what we can. Back to you, Kathy.
All right, we'll stay with you for just a minute, Mac. I just want to say I don't blame them for not wanting to talk right now. They've been through a lot because we heard descriptions of it sounding like someone was pounding on the building with metal rods.
Right.
And, you know, it was really scary for them out there. But I wanted to ask you, because you drove in today, what did you see? Like, how widespread is the damage, would you say, as you drove past?
Right. Well, let me tell you, I drove in from Long Beach, and it was great weather driving in. And the minute you almost enter Montebello from the freeway, the weather just changes. The cloud coverage just changes completely. It's dry right now. It isn't raining. And according to the city officials that described the event, that it was just much more violent than they had seen in terms of weather over the course of the last several months we've been seeing with these atmospheric storms. And that surprised them as well. And you mentioned the noise. When I talked to city city officials too. They said they heard the noise. There was no warning at all about kind of how severe it would be, and all of a sudden it just came down pretty hard along with the wind and the rain as well. But driving in, it was blue skies until you hit the Montebello area, and then it started getting covered with the gray skies, and of course the event that happened here just a few hours ago.
All right, Mac, we'll let you go, let you get more information.
Sure.
It's 1 o'clock right now, and you're watching the NBC4 News live coverage of what we can now confirm through the National Weather Service was a small tornado that touched down in Montebello. We should mention we also had another weather event in Carpinteria that happened earlier that we were covering since last night. But now confirmed by the National Weather Service that this was a small tornado touching down. We have meteorologist Shauna Mendiola and David Bigger here double teaming it for us this afternoon as we take a look at this. And David was showing us earlier, Shauna, how this all started out as a really small system that was going through, at least the one that went through Montebello, and then it just gathered steam and turned into this tornado.
Moved through the area, blew up, and now confirmed tornado. Still have to figure out how strong it was. Depending on the strength of the winds, that's how it's the damage is determined. They take a look at the debris on the ground, take a look at the damage on the buildings, which we know there was roof damage to one of those buildings in Montebello. So that is still coming together. But a tornado in Los Angeles is very rare. We don't usually see this type of weather. So when this was coming together, we wanted to tell people some safety tips and to how to stay inside. And as we look forward into the afternoon, the cell that moved through that brought that tornado is now weakening in form. So we don't have any rotation within that storm to produce another tornado from that cell. But if you take a look at the radar and offshore, we still have plenty of moisture out there. So thunderstorms are still possible throughout the afternoon. Really not done yet. So far, me and David haven't seen anything that has shown rotation, which is the wind coming together and kind of making a spiral. And that's what you see in terms of that tornado. But so far, very heavy rain and also some lightning that I've just seen over Los Angeles. So we'll keep a close eye on that. Also looking at, you were saying, David?
Oh, I was just going to say, it's as we continue to watch these cells throughout the afternoon, we're going to be closely monitoring each of them now, because we've now seen an example of one cell that quickly popped up, developed a lot of intensity, spun up a brief tornado, and then moved on. These are the kind of tornadoes that keep meteorologists up at night, are the kind that come without any sort of warning because they literally will spin up so fast. So we'll obviously continue to watch that. And as of right now, that cell is pretty much up into the mountains and becoming snow at this point. But we are still watching additional activity across the basin, but a lot of this is all just kind of widely scattered activity, not necessarily the kind of cells or storms that you'd be looking at to potentially develop any rotation on them. So as of right now, I think things have calmed down quite a bit. We're now just back into our mode of moderate to heavy rainfall at times, and then we're just going to continue to monitor any additional developments on these storms as we go through the afternoon.
Two-part question for you now. How surprised are you that this is a tornado? Not at all, or very surprised on a scale? And then what do you think of Carpinteria? Would you think that would also...
So the Carpinteria one, I saw the video. It definitely had kind of the swirling that you'd expect in the debris. That one's still pretty hard because the video on that one that I saw, it's not overly clear.
And it's late at night.
Yeah, and then NWS is going to go out there. They're going to make a site survey, and they're going to look at the damage. And then they'll figure out exactly how strong that one was. This one, obviously, very surprising to us to see something that was that well held together. You look at all the different videos, Shauna, and it just, it was a very well-formed kind of spin up.
I also think it moved through very quickly. It started off as nothing. I mean, well, not to say nothing, but just a very weak cell that brought rain to the area of Compton, just north of Torrance, like David mentioned, and strengthened right over the Los Angeles basin and quickly dropped. And then when we saw that video, we had to look at the loop, and we saw a hook, which is the signature of what could possibly drop a tornado. And again, we cannot confirm it from radar only. We need National Weather Service to go out there, and they have, and they've confirmed this.
All right. Well, we have on the phone Ariel Cohen from the National Weather Service. I know you were traveling out there. Now we have a confirmed tornado. Tell us about this.
Yes, we are looking at damage in a couple of areas that's occurred across Southern California in the last couple of days. Carpinteria right now, we have damage in parts of the area that were... So in Montebello, we have recently received reports of damage from an earlier thunderstorm cell that moved through and likely produced a tornado. We're going to be headed there later on today in order to assess the damage and determine a rating for the damage, and that will correspond to what we call the enhanced Fujita scale that will be indicating what the wind speeds may have been like.
All right. Well, I think we're going to let David come in because he is more of an expert in weather, and let you two maybe discuss how you assess what level tornado it is.
Typically when the storm surveys are done, we end up seeing, you guys end up looking at damage, and you guys have a kind of a booklet almost, or like a form to look at where you can see, okay, typically we would see a building that's made with, let's just say, wood framing. If we see this kind of damage, it tells you a wind speed, right? And is that how you kind of work out the varying wind speeds and the strengths of the storm or the tornado?
That's exactly the idea. We have what are called the damage indicators, and these are the types of structures that are categorized. And we use these structures in order to assess the degree of damage. Once we determine the degree of damage from a damage indicator, we are able to estimate the wind speed. So how heavily damaged we're talking about, whether the extent of the roof damage, if we're talking about awnings coming down, if we're talking about total structural damage, each of those damage indicators corresponds to the degree of damage, and we can estimate wind speeds from that.
Yeah, and then essentially, Kathy, what they end up doing is you can look at that damage, look at the wind speeds, and that's where you start looking along the enhanced Fujita scale to figure out exactly what it is. And in the state of California, for example, like an EF3 is exceedingly rare. I don't think we've ever really had, I'm trying to think if we have, but most of the tornadoes around our region typically EF0 or EF1. And I mean, obviously the National Weather Service, they will make the assessment of this, but it'll probably fall, somewhere in that scale.
Now, why is it we don't have stronger tornadoes? Why is it uncommon for us?
We don't have the same kind of storm activity that we have in the Midwest. The Midwest, you've got thunderstorms that go up to 60, 70,000 feet. For us, we're usually low-top thunderstorms. They don't have as much rotation to them, but we still, and he can also speak to this a little bit here for us, but it's, for our region, a lot of it's kind of topography driven, but we just have smaller and weaker cells compared to kind of the Midwest.
And Ariel, what do you, that what you were going to say too, that we're just different.
Exactly. A lot of areas of the country, when we're headed east of the Rockies, experience the moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. That is a very warm basin of water that adds a lot of moisture to the atmosphere, and when that moisture extends northward ahead of powerful storm systems, it's more favorable for creating what we call instability that drives the types of powerful thunderstorm updrafts that can rotate and really strengthen the tornadoes at the ground to reach higher ratings. And that's more typical out over the central and eastern United States. However, occasionally we do get some stronger tornadoes in California if the storm system is strong enough. And so just encourage everyone to know tornado safety tips and be weather ready.
I think we will now. Ariel, we have Conan Nolan with us. He's up in our newsroom following this, and he was giving us a little history about a stronger tornado that hit in the 80s, and he has a question for you, Conan.
Yeah, Kathy, so looking at the NOAA statistics for tornadoes in California since 1950, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration says that 467 reported tornado events across California since 1950. And the question I have for Ariel, though, is that breaking them down by the 58 counties, by far the greatest number of tornadoes, 45, hit in L.A. County. 33 in San Bernardino, 31 in Orange, 7 in Ventura. No county comes close, particularly in Northern California, to the number of tornadoes that have been registered in L.A. County alone. Why is that? Is that the topography, or it's just because since 1950, I mean, you could have a tornado perhaps in near the Oregon border that nobody actually saw back in the 1950s, but why do we suspect that something like of the so many of the tornadoes over the past 70 years, something like 76, over 100 have been in the 3 counties, LA, Orange, and San Bernardino.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, the topography creates a favorable setup for the LA basin to be an area where we get the combination of enhanced spin in the lower atmosphere and also combined with enough moisture coming off these Pacific waters that we are able to get those phased together in the same place in a concentrated location to really enhance the potential for tornadoes over a long time scale. Now, another thing that I'll mention is that, of course, with the population density being much higher in the LA area, we're more likely to hear about these reports of tornadoes where the population density is higher as compared to other parts of the state which may be more rural in population density. And so combination of the topography, as you mentioned, having the susceptibility to getting that moisture into that area of enhanced spin created by the topography and the LA basin area and the population all combined together to get more reports of tornadoes in the LA County area.
Is there any dynamic involving the mountain ranges that surround the LA basin, or that?
It's certainly possible. That's a great question. The analog is, if you've heard of the Denver cyclone before, kind of as the front range of the Rockies curves around to the east along the Palmer Divide, you kind of get this basin over the Denver area, the Denver cyclone, and that's a favorable area for tornadoes to spin up where we get thunderstorm activity in the summertime. And so when we have these kind of basins set up with favorable moisture, heat, and airflow through the atmosphere, we get the analog of something like that going on. I think there's still a lot of research that's to be done in terms of the unique aspects and dynamics that make the LA basin particularly favorable. But we can certainly look to other parts of the country to get some idea about what's going on.
And finally, with the amount, the number, it seems to be unprecedented number of atmospheric rivers, one after another, onto the West Coast. And based on what I'm looking at here with the historic record on tornadoes in the state, from your perspective, do you think this is eventually going to happen? I mean, you have that many weather events over a short period of time. At some point, you're going to have a funnel cloud somewhere.
Exactly as you're saying, as we have, in certain weather patterns, when we have a higher number of storm systems that interact with these streams of moisture, we're more susceptible. In other words, we're giving more opportunities and chances, for the atmosphere to produce, or the ingredients to come together to produce thunderstorms that can create tornadoes.
Fascinating. Kathy, back to you. He's answered my questions.
We could talk to him all day, right? Thank you so much, Conan. All right, Ariel, we should let you go soon. Just want to talk a little bit about what to expect next. I know you're probably heading to Carpinteria, and then we still have systems coming through. We've been talking about how people really need to be ready because we watched that small cell go from nothing into this tornado that caused damage. So we really need to be aware.
Absolutely. We still have this storm system and maybe even some future storm systems in the next week that could be bringing this more unsettled weather pattern to the LA area. And in association with this activity, additional bouts of heavy rain and strong winds will be possible. While we'll have a break later this week and this weekend, things could ramp back up next week.
And right now, meteorologist Shauna Mendiola, who's been with us for this coverage, she has a question for you.
Yeah, so Ariel, can you tell us more about the Carpinteria tornado from last night? I know it moved through late, something that, me and David were looking at as well. Hard to see the video, but definitely causing damage out there.
Yes, so we definitely have damage in the Carpinteria area. We're actually looking at this right now, and we're going to be continuing our damage survey and come up with some assessment about whether this was a tornado and a possible rating.
And hey, Ariel, quick question here from David. We also had a tornado warning late last night. That was for Point Mugu State Park. Is that one of those cases where there'll be any survey, or is it just kind of we saw something on radar, it was warned, and then because we haven't heard any reports from Point Mugu State Park, there's probably nothing?
So no surveys are planned for that particular area. We are not aware of any reports of significant damage. And you know, we did have a rotating shower and thunderstorm that moved on shore, and we're monitoring that area for a heightened potential for tornado development.
All right, thanks so much, Ariel, for all that information. We're actually going to go back to McCullough Medina because McCullough is under the cell. We were just talking about this earlier. It was going to start raining again, and now we're seeing rain and hail.
Yeah, about 5 minutes worth of it so far. Take a look right now. You can see this thing is just coming down and coming down pretty hard right now. We got the hail just before the rain, and now the rain is pretty consistent, and it came with a whole bunch of wind initially. The wind seems to have stopped, but boy, we are just getting drenched by this rainstorm as it comes down here just a couple of feet away from some of these buildings that sustained some of the damage from that tornado event. If you look over here, there's this Lopez fast food truck. We actually talked to the workers inside of that truck. They were describing to me the actual tornado around 11:30ish this afternoon or this morning. They said it felt like an earthquake. They thought it was an earthquake. For about 5 minutes, they said they heard what sounded like an earthquake, and then the winds, of course, freaked them out. They didn't know what it was, and then they saw all of the debris swirling around right next door to where their truck was parked. This recycling plant, one of the areas that got hit by this tornado that certainly caused a lot of damage, minor damage, of course, to lots of these buildings here in the Montebello area. And now we're getting down and hit by all of the downpour, which is certainly not great for all those folks trying to do some repair damage from that tornado. That's the latest we have right now here in Montebello. Back to you guys.
So, McCullough, have you experienced any hail, or is it mostly just the rain?
No, we got hail for like the first 10-30 seconds of this cell when it started coming down. We first got hit by some wind. It came down pretty quickly, the wind, and then all of a sudden the hail, and then just the rain, and the rain has been pretty nonstop since then, and it does look like it's a little lighter right about now, but still consistent. We're just soaked, though.
And there was nothing. It was dry when we talked to you early. All right, thank you, McCullough Medina, out in Montebello.
Out of nowhere, yeah.
Out of nowhere, where all that damage happened earlier. And David and Shauna, this is what we can look forward to this afternoon. I mean, things like this can pop up all of a sudden, going from dry to a downpour and a little bit of hail. That's how erratic this is?
Yeah, just the one that moved through right over McCullough. If we can show it here on radar, you can see that it was just very light rain, and then right over him just popped up. These are called pop-up storms in the afternoons, and it's when they have the most energy, when they move through. Heavy downpours at times. Again, not seeing any lightning within this, but it's enough to really produce strong gusty winds. And looking at it, I don't see any rotation to indicate possibility of a tornado with this one, but just heavy rain right now and the wind.
Yeah, and with the snow levels being around 4,000 feet or even a little bit lower than that, because we have a low freezing level, it makes it a little bit easier to get some small hail. So anything that starts to get a little bit of pop to it today has the potential to produce some small hail. So Mac just saw a little bit of that, very brief, very quick, and then it started raining very heavily. So there's still the potential for that this afternoon. Occasionally, some of these cells may be a little more intense.
Now, hail, we see that. We're a little bit more used to that. We see that. That's not an indicator of more serious weather to come, because I just know from working in other TV markets, hail could be a precursor to a tornado.
Well, it's usually because hail gets associated with severe thunderstorms. And in our case, we see hail far more often than we see funnel clouds and tornadoes. However, we do get a lot more funnel clouds, I think, than people think. But what we don't see a lot of here is large hail. We typically see our hail max out at about the probably pea-sized range.
Pea-size, yeah.
Once we start to get above that, because we have occasionally have marble-sized hail, penny-sized hail, when you start seeing that, that is definitely a very intense thunderstorm. And that's something that we'll end up watching if one of those ends up popping up. I've got one other thing I can actually quickly talk about. This is to Conan's point that he was talking about earlier. So if you look in this little California map here, so I've gone and pulled up the California tornadoes from 1950 to 2021. So all the tracks are on here as red lines. the little yellow area that you're seeing there, that is the National Weather Service office in Los Angeles and the National Weather Service in San Diego. That's their coverage area from the Central Coast down all the way to the border with Mexico. Since 1987, we've had 62 tornado warnings within that box. So it's not totally uncommon, but we usually get maybe one, and then we go for a couple of years without seeing another one. But if I zoom in here, this is kind of the Conan's point. Look at some of these red lines and dots on here. A lot of these are close to the coastline, so usually it's a water spout that ends up coming inland. But all these show that there's the potential that there's no such thing as no...
Impossible.
It's not impossible around our region. And if we actually transition to Northern California, you can see the Central Valley is just dotted with these red lines all the way down from essentially Fresno all the way up to the Sacramento area into the northern portions of the Sacramento Valley, up around Chico, and even the Bay Area. It's not totally uncalled for. California averages 11 tornadoes a year, and it's usually during our spring season and our fall season, which is when we pop thunderstorms.
Yeah, transition from the cold air to the warmer temperatures.
Right. I mean,
winter to spring.
But we don't see the damage always. I think it sets it apart. Like we're seeing a lot of damage here.
Well, yeah. I mean, just think of where a lot of those lines were. A lot of farmland through the Central Valley, a lot of coastal areas like in Ventura County or Santa Barbara County where there's not necessarily a lot of buildings and homes. In this case, it was literally in the middle of the basin, so there's no space where you can drop a tornado and not hit something. So that's where we see a lot of these little spin-ups all the time around parts of the state. Don't necessarily affect anybody. They just kind of run through a field. You can sometimes see it from a distance, and that's it. But anytime we develop something around our region, really close to our region, there's a risk that we could have it damage something.
What does that tell you about our weather patterns from what was to what is right now, especially if we're hitting in a populated area as opposed to those rural areas and neighborhoods that you just spoke of?
It's a little bit of... I think it's a function of a couple of things, and I mean, you can help me on this, Shannon, too, if you want. But
well, also the fact that there's such high population here, right? People are able to see these things. If you were out in the fields, and I'm sure there are a lot more frequency in terms of tornadoes out there, but they're not being reported. For us, it's rare, but with video now, you're able to see it, and National Weather Service can confirm these.
As population increases, as the layout of our city increases and gets farther and farther out, there's more of a possibility of receiving damage from some of these spots where maybe it was farmlands previously.
Right.
The 1983 tornado that went through Los Angeles, the very interesting thing in the report after that is that the National Weather Service was surprised. They in the report, a lot of officials throughout Los Angeles were like, oh, tornadoes don't happen here. And it's one of those things where I think it wasn't observed all that much previous to 1983, but now as more people are able to see these things, we record them with social media, as radar coverage has improved, we have a better idea of where these have happened, where they're spinning up. So I think it's a function of a couple of things, Michael. It's a little bit of the visibility, a little bit of the population and building increase, and stuff like that.
So the record keeping is what has changed, really.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay, we're going to thank you very much. We're going to bring in Chief Sam DiGiovanna because we talked about this system moving into the mountains and breaking up, and he had some advice for people if they live in the mountains specifically. Chief Sam?
Yeah, just stay alert, stay calm at all times, and I think this is a good reminder. A few weeks ago, we were caught off guard when we had all that snowstorm. I think this is, with today's event that comes up unexpectedly, snowstorms, and even earthquakes, we need to be prepared for up to 72 hours with food, water, and supplies. So I think this is a good reminder for all of us. We got out of this, without any injuries so far. Who knows what this afternoon is going to bring, but this is a great reminder. Get prepared. We don't know what's next.
Yeah, we're showing video right now that happened at that ARCO station in Montebello. And Chief Sam, I don't know if you saw it, but it's all glass windows at the ARCO station, and people are, taking video. They're looking outside because it is an amazing sight to see this. We don't often see this here, but that's not safe necessarily. You really have to be careful. I mean, they are inside, but I'm just waiting for one of those windows to blow out. It seems so scary.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Again, we touched on it earlier, but if you experience this again today, go to the center room of a house Stay away from windows, preferably under furniture. And as you mentioned, Kathy, if you have time, get a mattress cut and pull it over yourself to prevent from flying debris. If you're in a high-rise, go to the lowest level. If you're in a mobile home, do not stay in it. Those are very lightweight in construction and can tear up very easily. So also in your car, you're not going to outrun it. You know, if possible, you can get out of your vehicle and take shelter in a ditch. And if you can't, stay in, just like an earthquake. Duck, cover, and hold on.
All right, Chief Sam, we want to just put you on hold here for a second. We want to bring in Ron Rivera, who has some new images for us here from that ARCO station. Ron, are you with us?
Or at least can we put the images up to see what we are talking about here? These are new images that are coming in from that ARCO station. I'm assuming the same one that we saw earlier. We got this video in that someone got into. And there we go.
There we go. All right, so we're taking an exterior look now at this ARCO station. And Kathy, I saw the video from inside, and you saw all that stuff blowing around. Something that caught my eye early on was that ARCO sign that is now missing. I actually saw that fly through the sky of that witness's video not too long ago, as we see it here, split screen here on the right-hand side. But those images very telling about the strength and speed of those winds. Yeah, and you can see that it's all roped off right now. No one's going to be using that. What can you tell us about what's going on out there right now?
Yes, I'm located at the corner of Washington Boulevard and Maple. There is ARCO station, as you can see on the left top corner. The sign of this station, it's blown away, and this block they didn't let us go through, but I talked to a resident on one of the houses, and he said that he was taking a shower when he felt that. He got really scared. He came out on a towel, and he saw some cars that they were hit by the tornado, the hard wind, and it blew away roofs on some storage, and there is a few cars that they got hit, and there is a lot of rubble, and right now it's raining really hard, so I cannot move freely. And so the police is at the scene, and there's some crew cleanings, and that's what's going on right now.
And the cars were damaged out there. Were any people injured?
As far as I know, no people injured, and there was a few cars that they were hit, and they broke windows and mirrors, but nobody got hurt.
And we were talking to Macalo Medina out there. He had hail for a minute. Have you seen any hail?
Not hail so far, but heavy rain. Heavy rain coming down, as you can see right now.
And you're someplace safe? I mean, are you where you can stay safe?
Yeah, I'm safe. Just a little wet, but you know, it's part of the job, and you know, it is what it is.
You know, Juan, you talked about how police are there out on scene right now. Any other emergency personnel out there? And what about spectators? Are they being kept away from the area?
Yeah, they have been kept away from the area. The firefighters, they left already. It's only the police. They closed Maple. And there is some traffic here in Washington Boulevard. It's a little slow, but it's moving, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, the Montebello Police Department was advising avoid Washington Boulevard from Greenwood Avenue to Vale Avenue because of this incident, and they've got a lot of cleanup work to do out there. As we said, they have put tape up there around that ARCO, so no one's going to be going there. And Michael, you mentioned that sign is now missing, so there's stuff flew off of this building.
Yeah, what caught my eye here, Juan, thank you for that, but what caught my eye here, especially when you look at the video on the right, is the swaying of that palm tree there, and of course the sign. My eye also caught the street sign that seemed to be bent all the way down, or at least very close to the ground. So, you know, startling images as we take a look at what witnesses inside this ARCO shot. And David, you mentioned not too long ago that, you know, it's important to give authorities the space needed in order to conduct their investigations and basically take over the scene.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of things like power lines, for example, if you have down power lines, we don't know if those are energized or not, so you don't want to get anywhere near that. There's all sorts of debris that's been thrown around. This went through a recycling center, so there's who knows all the various parts of debris that have been lofted and thrown around with this. And you know, it's interesting, Sean, as I watch this like ARCO video, I am very surprised, but man, are we fortunate that we don't have a lot of injuries.
Right, nothing came through the window.
Because there's a lot of relatively sharp-looking debris flying around out there.
And you can see it rotate.
Yeah, so very good that everybody was inside, but this is why we say get away from the windows.
All right, we are coming up on 1:30 on the dot right now. You're watching the NBC4 News. We have live coverage of what is now confirmed by the National Weather Service as a small tornado touching down in Montebello. But we also had an incident, a weather incident that happened in Carpinteria last night, and you may have received an alert because we had a tornado warning alert that went through parts of Ventura and LA County. We want to bring in our Jonathan Gonzalez. He is in Carpinteria for us today. Jonathan, hello, and what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, well, we're seeing a lot of the same damage that you guys have been describing with this event in this tornado touching down in Montebello. It appears that a tornado or something very close to it went right through the Sandpiper RV home here in Carpinteria. You see a lot of this damage. Well, most of what we're going to show you right now is carport damage, things like this. This home got lucky, but if you take a look over here, I'm not sure if we're seeing video right now, if we're on our camera, but
we see both, Jonathan.
A lot of the sheet. Okay, well, we wanted to show you a lot of the sheet metal that has been sheared off these homes, like this one here behind us. Jorge, my photographer, is going to show you. You see, they put up a tarp here to allow for, you know, to try and stop some of the water from actually flowing into this home. But this was a carport. It's now gone. And what's consistent with the tornado is somewhat of a straight line, and that's what they're assessing right now. The National Weather Service is here on site as we speak, and they're assessing this damage, not only to see how much there is, but also what kind of materials in and of itself is actually damaged, to try and determine what speeds they were damaged. That'll help them, and along with some other videos that people took, determine whether or not a tornado did touch down here. The good news is there were no severe injuries, but again, up and down this road here next to these homes, it is just sheet metal pile after sheet metal pile, including some damaged trees. Now, one thing I want to show you that is significant, in almost every pile here, there's this plastic, and this plastic actually comes from a property next door. It is a greenhouse property. They have a series of greenhouses, and this sheet metal, this plastic sheet is actually the roof of these different greenhouses. And this sheet metal, this plastic can be found all over this massive property where these homes are, this mobile home park, but also on the other side of where we are, far from where this originated, in a cemetery next door. They're finding this kind of debris all the way there. We've seen video, as you may have seen here, of just, debris spiraling in the air. Just a wild event that happened here in Carpinteria last night. Everyone was out here cleaning up and helping out each other. That is some good news. And again, no injuries. That is the best news that we can tell you. Just a lot of home to different carports. And again, that straight line, the National Weather Service, again, now on site, trying to determine exactly what may have taken place here. We're told we should get an answer today. And one thing they did mention, guys, is that the moment they're done assessing this damage here, they're heading to Montebello to determine exactly what took place there, what kind of tornado, what rating they're going to place it at. And again, here, they're still trying to figure it out whether or not there was a tornado. But that's the kind of the situation here. We're going to continue to, tell this story throughout the day, but for now, we'll send it back to you.
Tornado or not, Jonathan, obviously some scary times for those folks out in Carpinteria as well as Montebello. Again, no severe injuries, but, David, we see that sheet metal pile after pile after pile out there. Yeah. I mean, what does that tell you about the strength of what rolled through?
So this is what the National Weather Service looks at. So they have kind of a booklet, if you will, and I've had a chance to look at this before, where it essentially shows all these varying building structures, building types, materials. So we're talking corrugated metal as opposed to regular metal, wood frame buildings as opposed to maybe some mobile homes, stuff like that. And each thing it talks about, well, we see this kind of damage and it correlates to this sort of wind speed. So it makes it hard, if you will, for the National Weather Service to figure out the strength of a tornado if it's in the middle of a field, because all you have to base it off of is just radar estimates and kind of if grass got ripped up and some trees. But if it's an area that's got buildings or structures, they have a little bit better of a chance of figuring out what the wind speed is because they have this entire reference book to look through and go, okay, so in Jonathan's case there, we see some corrugated metal that's all bent up. It looks like one of the structures has some pretty good damage to it, so that probably means wind speeds were at whatever, and that corresponds to a specific rating on the enhanced Fujita scale. So that's kind of what Jonathan's dealing with. But I'm going to hand it over to Shauna Mendiola now. So, Shauna, what are we kind of, oh yeah, she's actually got the Fujita scale for me here.
Yeah, so if the Fujita scale goes by the wind speeds, EF0 to EF1, and we've been talking about how that's a typical kind of tornado that we would see here in Southern California. The wind could be up to 110 miles per hour, and that correlates to the type of damage. So NWS goes out and they survey the damage after a tornado happens. They don't know how strong a tornado is till they go out and they see what type of damage has happened and can estimate what type of wind. So guessing from, already seeing, EF0 to EF1, it'd possibly be up to 110 miles per hour. With roof damage and also the kind of debris that we've been seeing in the video. You mentioned the EF3. I mean, that's a very strong storm.
And the thing is,
but not typical from here.
Right. And so for California, most of our tornadoes end up as an EF0 and EF1 usually. A lot of them, the vast majority, are probably EF0. Occasionally we'll get an EF2. That's pretty significant. We get that because we start to see some pretty significant damage, but very rarely, I'd have to go back and look through all the records. The
1983 one was an EF2.
There you go. So 1983 was an EF2, but you'd have to go way through the records to even see if we had an EF3, which I don't think the state of California has had. So that's kind of where we typically sit on the scale.
All right, well, we're taking a look at both of these incidents. The one in Carpinteria, we just saw Jonathan with all that damage, and also Montebello, which happened today, just this morning. So we want to go ahead and bring in Public Information Officer Alex Gilman to talk a little bit more about the Montebello situation. Alex, what else have you learned since we spoke with you last?
Well, absolutely. Well, good afternoon. It was shortly after 11:20 this morning that the Montebello Fire Department received our first call for potential roof damage following this event. Arriving units found, when they arrived on scene, definitely some extended roof damage to a total of 5 structures so far. Our units are currently continuing their preliminary assessment, so that number could extend, but right now we are looking at 5. And we are looking at right now 1 confirmed injury, and that individual was transported.
And how serious is that injury? Any word?
I don't have that information right now.
Okay. Are you hearing any information about the people who worked at this building? They've been evacuated. Now it's been raining, hailing. I guess they have all left, is what I'm assuming.
That is correct, yes. Our fire department members did an extensive perimeter setup and then went inside each of the affected structures, made sure all employees and anybody else inside these structures were evacuated safely. And I know a number of people are hoping to get back inside of their buildings, but we're asking them to please stay in touch with our public safety personnel outside the perimeter, and we're going to keep them updated as soon as it is safe to re-enter these structures.
Alex, really quickly, you did mention it for clarity here. 5 structures. Are we talking about 5 separate structures? Are they on the same block? Are they all connected? Explain that for me if you can.
Absolutely. We are looking at a number of blocks here. I can get you exact street numbers here. We're looking at least Washington Avenue to Date, and Date to Vale, and Date to Maple is the affected perimeter here. At least 5 confirmed structures. I believe one of these buildings is a strip mall type structure, but we are in the industrial side of Montebello here on the south side, so it is a positive here that this event, although it did happen, that it was in one of the more industrial areas and that no residential homes were affected.
And we saw some damage at an ARCO station. Looked like the sign had been blown off. But you have street closures here, or at least areas you want people to stay away from for a while because of danger.
Absolutely. There's no immediate danger here. We're just asking folks who are trying to pass through the area or might work here to please give a perimeter here to our public safety professionals as they conduct this assessment. And definitely, if there's any questions, please do not hesitate to walk up and ask one of our Montebello police officers who are conducting this perimeter, and they'll be happy to point to anyone who's looking to pass through the area in the right direction and the safest direction.
Ever been through anything like this before, responding to a tornado?
You know, this is definitely a first, but it's something that I think I speak for all public agencies when no matter where you're based at in the country, you're prepared for anything to happen at any time. So I could not be more proud of seeing what our fire department and police officers have been doing to respond to this situation here. This is what they train for each and every day. So we were well prepared for this too.
Really quickly, I want to talk about that injury. I know you don't have the extent of the injuries at this point, but was this somebody, and I only mention this because we're looking at the most extensive damage here at this building with the roof ripped off. Was that person from this particular site here? Were they inside? Were they outside? Were they a victim of falling debris? What can you tell us?
I unfortunately don't have that information right now.
All right.
All right. Well, Alex Gilman, Montebello Fire, thank you so much for giving us the latest on the situation there. If we can, maybe switch over to our Macalo Medina. He has been following this. When we first got to him, Macalo, you had no rain, then it was hail and rain. So there you go, Matt.
Yeah, and now it's no rain at all again, a little bit of sprinkle. We're here to talk with America. She's a senior over at Vail High School, which we didn't know was in this area. It's a continuation high school, right? Yes. Tell me where you guys were when this tornado hit your area.
I was in the classroom and we just heard like a lot of wind, I guess, and my teacher opened the door and the principal came in and he just said that everybody closed the door because the wind was really bad. So we had to stay there for lunch as well and eat lunch inside the classroom.
Right. And the school looks like it was dismissed a short time ago?
No, I just got picked up early from my mom.
Okay. Well, how many kids at the school?
I'm going to say like around 300.
300 kids. Were you frightened at all? Would it sound like a tornado? Do you know what a tornado sounds like?
Not really sure because we just thought it was wind. I mean, we were inside the whole time, so nothing really bad happened, but just like a little bit of tables fell down, and that's pretty much it.
Right. And the disturbing thing you guys were hearing was that potentially a teacher might have been hurt or somehow affected by this. Tell us what you saw.
Yeah, I just seen a video where like a teacher opened the door and she like flew out, and then I guess they picked her up and she went back inside the classroom.
And that you think that was from the actual tornado?
Yes, by the wind.
Wow, that's crazy. All right, America, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Again, looks like a high school in the area, Vail High School, continuation high school, impacted by the tornado. According to America, seen a video of a teacher somehow impacted by the tornado. There are no reports of anyone injured at this point that we've heard from anybody on scene here. That might be different from what you were hearing over there, but an interesting item that America tells us about the teacher potentially being blown out a little bit of the door as that tornado hit that school or near that school around 11:30 this morning. So we'll try to talk to some more folks here. It looks like there were a few students coming out of that high school. That has stopped right now, and it looks like they're not letting anybody, police at least, not letting anybody in that direction where some of the damage has occurred. We'll try to talk to some more folks here, get back to you when we can. For now, I'm Macalo Medina, live in Montebello. Back to you, Kathy.
All right, I'll take it from here, Mac. Thank you. So, David and Shauna, we get this account here from a student here at Vail High School. She tells us the story about her teacher. And what I will point out as well is she says she just thought it was wind. Sort of the weather we've been having over the past couple of weeks here, we just sort of excuse or blow off. But again, this must have been some serious wind to boot.
Yeah, the wind direction. I mean, spinning, right? We're talking about rotation, not just wind that's coming straight from the sky, or even just from one direction. It's just coming from all directions, like David talked about. We saw that video from the ARCO station, and people just kind of watching the debris flying, and we were both like, oh, we're so glad that nobody got hurt, because anything can fly through a window and you can get hurt. So we've been monitoring, again, the cell that moved through. If we take a look at First Alert Radar right now, we are seeing some heavy rain in areas like Montebello and East LA, then off east towards West Covina, but nothing in terms of rotation, and the winds I checked are pretty gusty, but the direction is coming from one way at this time. So that's good news there. It tells me that there's no tornadic activity developing right now.
Yeah, so one of the things, Michael, that we were talking about yesterday is we had the very gusty winds that we were concerned about. We weren't necessarily concerned with strong wind gusts for today, because essentially it's not a widespread thing. It's going to be isolated to specific cells. You can sometimes get a little bit of what we call outflow, where you get these winds that extend out in front of the storm. And so Mac had that. He said, oh, it got really windy, then it hailed, and then it rained. And it's like, okay, windy, that's telling me that the storm is almost to him because it's blowing the wind out toward him, and then he essentially went right underneath it. But I mean, kind of right now, as Sean and I are just kind of looking at satellite and radar, the system's still moving through Northern California. That's the other kind of element to this, is because we have this area of low pressure that's so close. Areas of low pressure, it's already got some of that circulation to it. It's inducing a little bit of circulation on some of these cells. Not necessarily enough to kind of keep them held together and produce tornadoes out of every single storm we're going to see today, but it does kind of help to keep these storms in the area. That's why we still have the chance all the way through the afternoon and evening hours for tonight. And it's not until the system moves out of the region, as we get into tomorrow morning, that things start to finally let up.
Yeah, it's going to take some time.
Do you often have to worry more at the beginning and end of a storm? Do you have to watch when the storm is moving out? Does it get more erratic at that point, or does it just seem like it does?
I think it depends on the type, right? Depending on whether or not we have cold air following the storm. If we have cold air, we get enough instability to pop up some of these thunderstorms, and that's what we saw this time around. So that's why we have snow in the mountains still, and the lower elevations, it's all rain.
Yeah, and so one of the things for California is when we do typically see funnel clouds and tornadoes, it is typically in fall and spring. And the reason for that is you can still have a couple of really cold systems like what we have right now, but you're also mixing that with a little bit of daytime heating. And what that does, it allows the atmosphere to get very unstable, and that's how you can pop thunderstorms. It's not to say we can't get a thunderstorm in the middle of December. We've had that before. But it has a tendency to be during spring and fall that we get kind of more of a chance of getting thunderstorms, or thunderstorms that could potentially create any spin-ups. So.
Yeah, we were talking to the National Weather Service, to Ariel Cohen, and about the atmospheric rivers, and Conan was asking that question. We've had a lot of those. How unusual is that, or is that just something we expected this year?
Well, the thing for California is, so Southern California specifically, our rainfall is the most variable across the entire country. We can have a very wet year followed by an incredibly dry year. Right. So there's really no such thing as a normal rain season for us. Most of the rainfall for California is all atmospheric river driven. So if we get 2 in a season, that's what we end up getting. This year we've had over a dozen, and you can see what that's done rain total wise around the region. We do get atmospheric rivers every winter. That's a normal thing, and that's how we get our rainfall. That's how we get our water in our state. But this year has definitely been an exception with that. And I know this will kind of be a hard thing to separate, but even though we did have an atmospheric river, week one, associated with this weather system, that's already moved through the region. That was some of the heavy rain that we saw yesterday and the preceding day, so the rain that we had going through late Monday night into early Tuesday morning, the whole morning commute stuff. Now we're essentially just dealing with your regular, so to speak, run-of-the-mill cold front. Worked through the region, left all the cold air behind it, and that's where you typically pop some thunderstorms.
Incredible stuff here. We want to get back out to Juan Rivera. He's out in front of that ARCO station where we had some pretty descriptive video here. This is what it looks like right now, and we've been split screening here this video here, Kathy, with the stuff that was shot from inside. Juan, are you with us? And last time we spoke with you, you said the police were on scene. A lot of the other personnel, emergency personnel, had sort of, left the scene at this point, but we have street closures in the area, some traffic, but slow moving to boot.
Yes, sir. The police is still here. The rain stopped. We're not allowed to go where the damages are right now, but there is not firefighters or anybody else. There is some people trying to clean all the rubble.
Have you talked to anyone, Juan? Have you been able to speak with anyone who described what happened?
Yeah, I talked to a resident that he said that he was taking a shower, and when that happened, he got scared and he ran just with the towel and saw the damage, and he got really very scared. So, but he was also surprised that we haven't seen a tornado here. That doesn't happen. So he was pretty scared, but he was happy that nobody got hurt.
Yeah, as are we. We're not hearing of many injuries. One, we don't know yet what the circumstances are. Juan, but we've heard the descriptions, and it sounds like it was a very violent event, like very loud. And living in Southern California, you don't know what it is. Some people said they thought it might be an earthquake, so I'm not surprised that he ran with a towel. Anybody else that you're talking with, anyone else out and about? They're doing cleanup, you said?
Well, so far I haven't talked to anybody because it was raining pretty hard and everybody kind of took cover. And but with this gentleman, he was pretty scared. He was pretty scared, and but he was at first he thought it was an earthquake or something like that, but it never thought it was a tornado because but the noise and the wind was pretty strong.
All right, Juan, we're going to, play around with your shot here, bringing David and Shauna here once again. And, his reaction to what was happening, the guy taking a shower, came out in a towel, thought it was an earthquake. I think we're all prone to believe that it's an earthquake before a tornado.
Yeah, absolutely. In Southern California. Yeah, I mean, with some of the wind speeds that we would have seen and with the way this is going through and causing damage and throwing debris up, I would not be surprised if there's a little bit of shaking that you're feeling and stuff. But the sound alone probably would be the dead giveaway. If you're outside that this is probably a tornado. You're just going to hear the sound of it going through, like this recycling center that we're looking at on the screen.
With larger tornadoes, I know in the Midwest they describe a freight train. If you ask, what does a tornado sound like? It sounds like a freight train. Yeah. So it's loud.
Yeah, it's loud. It's a combination of wind. I mean, you can think of how loud wind is on a day that you're at the beach and it's 30-mile-per-hour winds. It's not that strong and it already has a lot of noise to it. You start putting it through buildings, trees, all sorts of stuff, and increase that wind speed to, let's just say, something around 150 miles an hour, it's going to sound really, really loud. So that's where I think that description comes from.
How long do you think it will take the National Weather Service to say how big this is and to give us more? How quickly do they work?
It depends. I mean, they can work pretty quickly usually. This is a short pathway, and it's not very wide, so they've got just a little area that they can work in. And actually, we've got some more video that we had from Twitter earlier that will show what this looked at, and we'll show it in just a second. But it shouldn't take them too long. They just got to get to the site. They got to start looking through stuff. And I mean, just based off of some of the images that we've seen already, there's plenty for them to look through. So they should be able to turn a report around probably by this evening.
And then it goes into the record books and with every other weather event in history.
It officially gets logged by the National Weather Service, and it'll get added, that map that I was showing earlier of all the tornadoes. Eventually there'll be 2 more little dots on there.
And do they use it for any type of study?
Possibly. I mean, there's been some research into like the 1983 tornado. They did a whole report because that was so unexpected for Los Angeles.
Especially if this comes out to be EF1 or EF2.
Yeah.
Because the roof came off a building.
Yeah, so I mean, they might go back and look at it. Somebody might research it. We're going to now show you the other video that we got from Twitter here at some point. And the reason why I wanted to show it is because I was looking at it with Shauna earlier, and it's one of those instances where you look at it and you go, wow, that's a tornado.
Yep.
Clearly. It's very clear. So whenever we do get it, obviously we'll show it to you, and you can kind of react with us.
Right. It wasn't just the funnel that you could see. You could see all the debris spinning up with it.
Oh, here it is. So, I mean, you see the funnel, so that's the darker section there. That's what we call the condensation funnel, so it's extending out of the cloud. Now, you might look at that, and if you didn't see the bottom where the debris was, you would say, oh, there's a funnel cloud. But as soon as you start seeing debris getting thrown around, that tells you the circulation has gotten all the way to the surface, and that means it's a tornado. Even if you don't see the cloud, that condensation funnel part of it go all the way down to the surface, as long as you see debris swirling around, it's there. Yeah, so that's just an incredible shot. Every time I see it, I'm just surprised.
It's not your sort of, it's what you typically would think of when you think of a tornado, and it's pretty sizable.
Yeah, it's sizable. And obviously it's, as you can kind of see, it's decreasing in size as it gets closer to the ground. So that's why the shot from News Chopper 4, it's such a small path. It's half of the recycling center essentially, but if this had been any wider, we would have had a lot more damage of that recycling center and areas around. It's just, this is still an incredible video to look at.
Yeah, that would be enough for me to shelter in place, for sure.
I think the damage that we saw where Jonathan is and Carpinteria, just the large material that got tossed around, that was concerning to me.
All right, so you guys, if you can stand by here for a quick second, we want to get back to McCollum Medina, who spoke to a student not too long ago at a nearby school. And Mac, I see you're with somebody else now.
Right, another student, Candy, along with her father, Pablo. Candy actually just saw a video, and we just saw it too, of the teacher that was opening the door in the middle of this tornado, and it looked like was kind of pushed out a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell me what you saw.
Well, I just saw like the teacher opening the door, and then like the wind, like she like pushed her out of the classroom. So.
Right. Teacher, you identified as Miss Bo. She's okay though, right?
Yes. I think.
Tell me what it was like for you guys inside of the school when it happened. What did it sound like? What did it feel like?
Well, I was inside the classroom, but I just heard the wind like blowing, and then the teachers opened the door, and then we just saw like the rain. Like there's like a lot of wind in the rain.
Did it sound like, some people are describing it like an earthquake? It's what they heard. They kind of thought it might have been an earthquake when it first happened.
Well, no, but we just saw like the door shaking a bit.
And you immediately, were told to stay put, stay inside? Yeah, and then you decided to call your dad, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, what do you mean?
Like, why did you call your dad? You wanted to leave school and get out of there? Were you afraid at all? What was your thought process?
Yeah, because I thought it was going to be like dangerous for us to stay in the school.
Candy, thanks for what you're talking to us. Pablo, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Once again, they shared with us this video. We'll share it to you in just a couple of minutes here, but it does look like one of the teachers identified as Miss Vo apparently opening the door during this hurricane, and she just gets sucked out a little bit. She's apparently okay right now. No major injuries. Not quite sure if there's any minor injuries. We're going to try to do a little bit more digging, but let me get that video too, and then we'll come back live and give you some more details about that once we learn more as well. Back to you guys.
I can't even imagine what she was thinking when she opened the door and felt that, because we're not, again, used to feeling that. What's it like right now? It looks like it's dry. Is it raining at all out there?
No, it's completely dry right now. Just crazy. I literally experienced this now twice in the matter of, an hour or two that I've been here, maybe 2.5 hours. When I first got out here, it was like this after that initial hurricane or tornado that happened roughly around 11:30, and then we got that wind, and then that hail, and then that rain, and then it was constant for about 30 minutes or so, and then it's dried up again. It's just strange.
It really is. Sometimes we just don't have words for it. We do have newscasts coming up throughout the afternoon, so we will look for that video. McCullough, thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, so Vail High School out there where Mac is located right now. And Shauna and David, we heard both students now talk about just the blowing of the wind, and that teacher that tried to open the door, and as they put it, was sort of sucked out here a bit. So typical of what we've been talking about here often and long.
I mean, strong winds.
Strong winds. It's over 73 mile per hour wind gusts. So it just shows you how strong that's for an EF0. Which we can see some damage in these buildings.
And Shauna, remind us, when do you hit hurricane winds compared to that? When is it a hurricane? Just
I think
to give
it's 75.
So 74 miles an hour or stronger, you're into hurricane strength. One thing to also talk about with wind, when it's strong wind, essentially that teacher opening the door, he or she is holding a big sail. And the door is going to just catch that. It's the same thing with like your car door. If you are in an area where it's kind of windy, you go to open your car door, it's like, ooh, it's got a little.
Sometimes it's so strong it feels like it's going to fly off. When we've been covering a weather event, sometimes you open it to get out of the news truck, it feels like that door is coming off.
Right, and sometimes that's what can happen with like straight line winds is in like a warehouse building, you can have the wind come in through any open, like the large kind of trailer doors, and then that can start putting a lot of pressure on the bottom side of the roof, and that's where we sometimes get roofs that blow out during straight line winds. Or the eaves of the rooftop sometimes will get caught in that wind and it acts like a sail. But in this case, obviously a little bit different with the way that the wind damage was caused. But still, the fact that the teacher felt that, that's probably why.
Set us up for the afternoon now because like I said, we are gearing up for the NBC4 News at 3 later today. But what should viewers expect as we head now into these afternoon hours, which is typically when we expect to see pop-up thunderstorms?
Yeah, so we're going to continue to see more moisture outside. We are watching a big cell right now from basically the San Fernando Valley out towards the Inland Empire. This system that's spinning in all that moisture is still located up in Northern California, so that's why I'm showing you this satellite radar picture. Yesterday we were watching that area of low pressure, and it's really hasn't budged very much, David, so that's why we're seeing all this moisture move onshore. Still looking at the possibility of some thunderstorms here this afternoon and even this evening. And like we've been mentioning, because this has been kind of a individualized case, and that system that moved through to bring that tornado came from nothing. It was a very small system that was just light rain and strengthened. We're going to have to watch every single cell that comes our way now for the possibility of something like this.
Yeah, so heavy rain right now over the San Gabriel Valley, and then we'll have additional shower activity later on this afternoon, and we'll be watching them all very closely. We'll have more 3 and 4.
All right, so just to recap here, we've gotten word that 5 structures over a series of blocks here in Montebello have been damaged. This is more of an industrial area. One of those structures included a store here at a strip mall. We do have one confirmed injury here, Kathy. That person was taken to a hospital. We continue to dig for more information on what that injury is and where it actually happened.
Yeah, thankfully only one injury at this point. The fire department is out there assessing the situation there. All of those workers have been evacuated. This is from the ARCO station. Some people got video of that. You see that stuff being tossed around in that stereotypical swirling motion. And sure enough, the National Weather Service on scene now telling us indeed this was a small tornado. We'll have full coverage starting with the news at 3.